Chapter 381. Back in the Miller residence, Ethan had a slightly sad look on his face. But when he saw Olivia, his gaze instantly turned gentle. "You're back." Olivia couldn't care about what had happened between them. She walked right up to Ethan. "What happened to Marina? We're not sure if she's alive or not. Is it the work of Toxic Hive? We can't be sure about that yet. I wanted to meet up to ask her about Miss Parker. I didn't expect something to happen to her even before we managed to meet up. But she probably won't die." Olivia asked. "Why? If they wanted to silence her by killing her, they could just give it a little push after the accident. She was barely alive then, and she would be considered dead because of an accident. They went through the trouble to take her away, so it's obvious that they're not after her life." Olivia frowned as well. She asked, why would they do something to Marina? If Olivia was Chloe's reason for getting harmed, she wondered what Marina's was. Ethan rubbed between his eyebrows, exhausted. "There's one thing we can be sure of. Marina has something to do with the sudden worsening of Miss Parker's condition. They were probably worried that Marina might tell me something when we met up. So, they planned the accident." Olivia punched the back of the couch. "Who exactly are they? Why would this benefit them at all?" At first, she could pinpoint it on Leia. But now that these things had happened, she couldn't understand what they were trying to do at all. She wondered if their ultimate goal was to get rid of Ethan and everyone close to him. Ethan had a cold and stern look on his face. "We can't determine anything at the moment. Does Mr. Carlton know about this?" "We can't hide it. The car belonged to the Carltons, and the family already knew about the serious accident. Mr. Carlton Sr. and Mr. Carlton must have known about it by now." While Ethan was speaking, his phone rang. It was a call from Otto. Even from a distance away, Olivia could hear Otto's furious shouts over the phone. Otto ended the call. Reaching out, he patted Olivia on the head. "I don't know what they're after. But for your safety, you shouldn't go out anymore for the time being. I don't want anything to happen to you." With that, he showed Olivia what was left at the scene. Marina was taken away, but the large puddle of blood on the backseat sent chills down Olivia's spine. She could also see some blood on the shattered glass. Marina must be done for this time. "Don't worry, it's safe at home. I'll ask someone to send the child here. You like Connor a lot, don't you?" Olivia's eyes lit up. She hadn't seen the child in a long time. Her eyes were shining. "Really, can I?" Ethan felt guilty for a moment when he saw the look in her eyes. Lowering his head, he planted a kiss between her eyebrows. "Of course. I'll visit the Carltons to handle the matters related to Marina. Don't go out for the time being. If you have to, make sure to tell me, all right?" Olivia replied, "Okay." Ethan didn't ask about Avery. He hastily left the Miller residence. He had just left when the child arrived. Olivia hadn't seen Connor in a long time, and he was already quite adept at walking. When he followed her on the island, he still waddled like a penguin. When he saw Olivia, he eagerly wriggled out of Nina's arms. "Mommy, Mommy!" Connor ran up to Olivia. Reaching out, he grabbed Olivia's legs. His small face was filled with bliss. "Connor, I missed you so much." Holding Connor in her arms, Olivia planted kisses all over him. It was only then that Olivia noticed a girl standing next to Mina. The girl was staring at Olivia with a timid look in her eyes. Olivia recalled that Marina had given birth to twins. They were both Ethan's children. Connor looked very much like their father, but Marina completely inherited Marina's looks. Anyone could tell at a glance that this was Marina's child. With Connor in her arms, Olivia walked up to the girl and crouched. She extended a hand to the girl politely. But Marina slapped the back of Olivia's hand as hard as she could. The slap resounded clearly in the room. Chapter 382. Not only Marina's looks but even her personality was the opposite of Connor's. The little girl's eyes were filled with enmity toward Olivia. She was young, but she knew everything. Mina hastily said, "I'm so sorry, Miss Fordham. Marina is shy, so she doesn't like strangers getting close to her." Olivia had already retracted her hand. She wouldn't blame the child for her hate toward Olivia. But since Marina hated her, she wouldn't try to please Marina, either. Their relationship was quite odd. Connor was Marina's child as well, but Olivia felt a sense of familiarity when she first met him. It's okay, she's just a child. But what about you? Olivia looked at Mina's leg. Is your leg okay? Back on the ship, Jack had shot Mina. Mina smiled. Thank you for your concern, Miss Fordham. I wasn't seriously hurt. I've already rested and recuperated for a few months. Even though the injured nerves need time to heal, it won't affect how I take care of the children. By the looks of it, Jack had been merciful. If not, Mina's leg would have been done for. I'm glad that you're fine. Olivia set Connor down. Connor had grown a lot, so he felt heavy in her arms. The only thing that hadn't changed about him was his tendency to drool. Reaching out, Olivia pinched him on the nose. Look at all that drool, little guy. Grinning, Connor revealed his snowy white teeth. A light dimple appeared on his left cheek. It wasn't obvious before, but now, Olivia could see it. She was puzzled. Ethan and Marina didn't have dimples, so it didn't make sense for Connor to have one. Avery's face suddenly popped up in Olivia's mind. When he smiled, he had a dimple on his left cheek as well. Olivia shook her head. She didn't know where her mind was going. This trait probably skipped a generation or two as it was being passed down. Mommy, play ball. Connor held a small yellow ball in his arms. It was the ball he had played with Olivia before. Mina took Marina to the couch to change her diapers. Smiling, she explained, Master Connor likes to play ball with me at home. When he's upset, he sulks while hugging the yellow ball. He would put it next to him even when he was sleeping. When I was packing up for him today, he kept holding it in his arms. Olivia felt guilty when she heard that. She recalled the night when she lured the child out with the yellow ball. She almost jumped into the ocean with Connor in her arms. But Connor didn't know about these things. He only knew that he was happy to see Olivia again. His heart was filled with Olivia, and he only had eyes for her. His eyes glimmered. Olivia kissed him on the forehead. What a silly little guy. Connor gripped her clothes with his little hands. He even nuzzled against her chest, looking quite obedient. Mina was stunned. I've never seen Master Connor being so attached to someone before. Isn't he like this at home? Olivia asked. Mina shook her head. Not at all. Master Connor developed faster than Miss Marina, and he's smart as well. He could say, Daddy, when he was just a few months old. Mrs. Miller kept trying to get Master Connor to call her Mommy, but he never did. Olivia was stunned when she heard that. Doesn't he call everyone Mommy? Mina smiled. You must be joking, Miss Fordham. Master Connor is very smart. I've been taking care of him ever since a few days after his birth. Ever since learning how to talk, he would call me Miss Mina. 6 months ago, he started mumbling, Mommy, sometimes, and even in his sleep too. But he refused to call Mrs. Miller that in front of her. Mrs. Miller would always be pissed off by that. Chapter 383. It was Olivia's turn to be puzzled now. She wondered what was going on with the child. When she first met him, he didn't even know how to walk. But he would tug at her clothes and call her Mommy. Are you serious? He never called anyone that before. I'm sure of it. I am always around him, after all. Other than his mumbles, he never called anyone Mommy. He may be young, but he's very much like Mr. Miller. Ever since he learned how to walk, he rarely lets anyone carry him. That's why I was surprised to see him getting so close to you, Miss Fordham. He even calls you Mommy. Olivia felt a little awkward when she heard that. She could only find an excuse. It was probably when we stayed on the island. I always took care of him back then, so maybe he learned to depend on me. That makes sense. Speaking of which, you were so brave that night, Miss Fordham. The kidnappers were armed, but you ran after them anyway. If it weren't for you, Master Connor wouldn't have made it back home. Olivia put on an awkward smile. Then, she glanced down at Connor. While she was chatting with Mina, Connor leaned against her chest. He played with the decorations on her clothes. He was drooling again, and he looked quite innocent and carefree. Mina quickly changed Irina's diapers. Then, she made some milk for Irina. Marina sat obediently on the couch to drink the milk, but her eyes were trained on Olivia. Olivia felt a little uneasy about it. Marina's face was just like the mini version of Marina's. Olivia felt like Marina was staring at her. Nina walked up to Connor. Master Connor has outgrown diapers by now. I'll take him to the bathroom. Connor cocked his head to the side. He leaned right against Olivia's arms as he spoke. His pronunciation had gotten clearer. Mommy, hug. Let me do it. Olivia carried Connor to the bathroom. She wondered if Connor was traumatized because she had suddenly left him alone back then. Now, his greatest fear was Olivia abandoning him again. So, he refused to be away from Olivia for even a moment. Olivia's troubled heart healed a lot because of Connor's arrival. She couldn't see any traces of Marina on Connor's face. Hence, Olivia felt a sense of familiarity with him. Connor seemed to like her a lot. Even when she put him down, he insisted on following her around like a tail. Madame Burgess prepared the meal while Mina took care of Marina. Marina sat on the baby stool, but Connor insisted on sticking to Olivia. Master Connor likes you so much, Mrs. Miller. People would mistake him for your son. Madame Burgess spoke without thinking much about it. She only realized her mistake when she had finished her sentence. Mrs. Miller, I know you don't have any ill intentions. It's okay. Nina also spoke up. Master Connor, I'll feed you after I've fed Miss Marina. Be good and wait for me, okay? Connor opened his mouth, acting like a baby bird waiting to be fed. Mommy feed. Olivia smiled helplessly. All right, fine. Aunt Olivia will feed you. Connor corrected her sternly. Your mommy. Aunt Olivia. Mommy. They had already argued over this countless times on the island. Olivia always lost to him. In the end, she decided not to argue with the child anymore. When they were on the island, Connor mainly drank milk. Now, he drank milk sparingly and was preparing to eat proper food. Madame Burgess pampered the children, so she made a lot of weaning food for them. Olivia asked, what does he like to eat? Nina rattled off a long list. Before Olivia could say anything, Madame Burgess spoke up. Why does Master Connor have the exact same preferences as you, Mrs. Miller? You two even hate the same things. Chapter 384. Chris was at the Carlton residence. He was already grieving, but now, even his daughter's life was in danger. He looked very worn out. Even Ethan pitied Chris when he saw the latter like this. Mr. Carlton, don't worry too much. Marina must still be alive. If not, they wouldn't have gone through the trouble to take her away. Chris sighed. Even if she's still alive, she won't be alright. Otto slammed his hands on the table. Who are those people? How dare they attack my granddaughter in broad daylight? After all, he loved his granddaughter the most since she was young. He would risk his life to fight anyone who dared to hurt her. The current evidence points to the toxic hive. Otto's expression shifted. That's impossible. It couldn't have been the toxic hive. Ethan had a feeling that Otto was overreacting. He turned to look at Otto, a deep look flashing across his dark eyes. Why couldn't it have been the toxic hive? Otto hastily hid his emotions. You have been cracking down on toxic hive, haven't you? How would they dare to cause trouble in broad daylight? Moreover, my granddaughter didn't have any grudges with them. Why would they do it? Ethan frowned deeply. Toxic hive is getting more arrogant these days. Instead of a medical organization, they were more akin to terrorists. I had someone retrieve the footage from the hacked surveillance cameras at the scene. We can determine that the man who appeared at the scene was a member of Toxic Hive. Otto wanted to retort, but Ethan showed him the evidence. This is the man who took Marina away. This man is covered from head to toe. How can you be sure that he's from Toxic Hive? Ethan zoomed in. An eagle tattoo was half exposed on the man's wrist. This man's original name is Ryan Woods. He's one of the members of Toxic Hive, and his most distinctive feature is this tattoo of his. He was also one of the people involved in the kidnapping. Chris slammed his cup. Those toxic people, they're getting too bold nowadays. Ethan comforted Chris, but he kept looking at Otto. When Otto saw the evidence, he wasn't angry. Instead, he was filled with disbelief. His reaction was simply too odd. Gripping Ethan's hand, Chris said, "This morning, I contacted Toxic Hive and agreed on a time to meet up with them. Ethan, you should take the opportunity to capture them all. Mr. Carlton, why did you contact Toxic Hive? Chris said in regret. The hospital has issued an advance directive for Chloe. I knew that Toxic Hive has been researching leukemia these days. I was out of options, so I wanted to make a deal with them. But I didn't expect that something would happen to Marina. Thinking for a moment, Ethan spoke up. Please calm down, Mr. Carlton. If it is the Toxic Hive, then Marina would be in their hands. If I try to capture them, it would only endanger her. What do you mean? Since Toxic Hive agreed to meet up with you, let's just play along and see what they're planning. We shouldn't alert them. As Ethan coaxed Chris' anger slowly receded. It was true. If he acted on his anger, it would only kill his daughter and Chloe. What ideas do you have, Ethan? Ethan said in a low voice. I'll go with you to meet them. No, that's too dangerous. I have to go because it's dangerous. We've always had limited knowledge of Toxic Hive. This would be a great opportunity to understand them. After thinking about it, Chris still didn't think it was a good idea. No, it's just too risky. Mr. Carlton, I have personal reasons as well. It was his only chance to see Leia again. Chapter 385. Chris contacted Toxic Hive again. He thought that they would reject communication after Marina's incident. Unexpectedly, they told him to go to the agreed place on time. He didn't know what Toxic Hive was thinking. Since they were bold enough to say that, he would be brave enough to meet them as well. After planning their strategy, Ethan had to go back and get ready. When he left, he noticed that Otto was in a daze. Otto seemed to be very out of it. After leaving the Carlton residence, Ethan gave an order. Investigate what Mr. Carlton Sr. has been doing and the people he met. Brent knew what he meant right away. Mr. Miller, are you suspecting Mr. Carlton Sr.? If no one is hiding the Toxic Hive, we would have found traces of them by now. Few people in Aldenvine can do that. There was something off about Mr. Carlton Sr. today. Brent frowned, saying, with a status like that, Mr. Carlton Sr. won't get involved with those scum, will he? Do you know why scammers who sell health products always target old people? Is it because old people are stupid? No, it's because the older people get, the wiser they become. The scammers keep succeeding because old people all have a critical weakness. Brent asked, what is it? They're afraid of death. The more powerful they are, the more they fear death. The officials of other countries started contacting Toxic Hive for medicine. After all, their medicine is far better than the ones available on the market. Brent concluded, so you think that Mr. Carlton Sr. shares the same thought? A few years ago, Mr. Carlton Sr.'s legs started getting weak. He's much better now compared to before. So, he might have made a deal with Toxic Hive. That's why he was in disbelief when he learned that Toxic Hive had something to do with Marina's accident. Ethan scoffed. He probably thinks of Toxic Hive as his business partner. He even thinks that the Toxic Hive can only depend on him to survive. He didn't realize how much the Toxic Hive has evolved all these years. Brent fell silent for a moment. Then, he sighed. Mr. Carlton Sr. has gotten old, after all. He's confused. Of course, this is just my guess. Go and look into it. Understood. Ethan's guesses were usually quite close to the truth. Mr. Miller, it's dangerous for you to go with Chris to meet the Toxic Hive. We have to prepare for it. Do I summon our men? It's okay. If Toxic Hive agrees to meet someone, they won't have the meeting in their nest. If we have too many men with us, it'll only alert them. Just do as she has told us to. Ethan returned to the Miller residence. Mina was in the living room, playing with Marina. When Mina saw Ethan coming back, she hastily got up and greeted, Mr. Miller. Where is she? She's upstairs bathing Master Connor. Master Connor is very attached to Miss Fordham. Even if Mina hadn't told him, Ethan knew how attached Connor was to Olivia. He quickly went up the stairs. When he opened the door to the master bedroom, he could hear Connor's crisp voice giggling. Olivia was also smiling happily, which was a rare sight. You little rascal, don't spray the water around. Look, I'm all wet now. Oh, Now you've done it. If you keep splashing water on me, I'll splash it back on you. The two played together happily. When Olivia saw the man standing at the entrance, she couldn't even react in time, so the smile remained on her face. When Connor saw Ethan, his eyes gleamed. He called out in a sweet voice, "Daddy." His smile could heal everything. Ethan walked toward him. Reaching out, Ethan caressed Connor's head. "Good kid." Olivia glanced at Ethan. Her usually gloomy and cold face was now as warm as the sun. She didn't realize that Ethan loved Connor so much. But Olivia found Ethan's smile blinding. He had probably forgotten that once upon a time, he had a child who never saw the sun before they died. Chapter 386. The light disappeared from Olivia's eyes. Putting down the towel, she said coldly, "Go ahead and bathe him. I'll go change my clothes." With that, she strode out of the room without waiting for Ethan's reaction. She couldn't bring herself to hurt a child, but she couldn't bear to see Ethan pampering Connor either. She couldn't help but wonder what would happen if her child were still alive. She wondered if things would have turned out differently by now. But in reality, it wouldn't change much. Bringing him into this world would only endanger him. After all, she couldn't even ensure her safety. Ethan quickly came in after her. Olivia was changing her clothes, so a large area of her fair skin entered his line of sight. Olivia cried out, and Ethan quickly turned around. Soon, he realized something. They had done even the most intimate of acts, but they reacted as if they were strangers. Even his instincts were telling him that they were getting further away. He didn't even realize one. After Olivia had changed her clothes, Ethan came back in. "Where's the kid? Don't tell me you left a small child alone in the bathroom." "Don't worry, I let Mina take over. I have something to talk to you about." Oh, Olivia wore a short-sleeved top, but she didn't feel like it was enough. She took a coat and put it on, covering herself firmly. She feared that even a little bit of her skin would be exposed. Ethan felt dissatisfied with her actions. But he was running out of time, so he didn't comment much on that. He immediately voiced his reasons for coming back. "I'll go with Mr. Carlton to meet the toxic hive tonight. I'm not your wife. You don't have to report your whereabouts to me." Olivia spoke indifferently as she sat down. Taking a random book, she looked at it. "Liv, do you have to be like this?" Closing the book, Olivia looked up at him, returning the question. "Then what do you want me to do, Ethan?" "Care about you. Which identity am I assuming? Your ex-wife, or your enemy?" Ethan clenched his fists. "So we can't return to the past anymore. For real. The past. You've never experienced my suffering, but you mentioned the past so nonchalantly. What past should I be talking about? We were a proper family, but we ended up like this in the end. What do you want me to do? What can I even do?" Her eyes were filled with mockery, and Ethan felt his heart breaking when he saw that. Placing his hands on her shoulders, he said earnestly, "Liv, I told you that I'll give you a proper answer. Toxic Hive is a dangerous and complicated organization. You don't have any evidence, but you insist that a dead person is the murderer. How can I believe you?" Olivia peeled his fingers off of her. "It's not important whether you believe it or not. What matters is that one day, I'll shove the evidence in your face and tell you that you were wrong." Ethan felt fear when he saw her determined gaze. His sixth sense told him that he was right to have hidden the truth. If Olivia learned of it, they would truly never go back to the past again. "Liv, take good care of Connor tonight. He likes you a lot." Ethan changed the topic. Olivia wanted to argue more, but Connor had already put on his clothes. He ran toward the two with some drool on his face. He kept mumbling, "Mummy, Mummy." Olivia couldn't be mad at Connor even if he were Marina's son. When she had returned to her senses, the child was already in her arms. Ethan sighed in relief. "Don't go anywhere tonight. Wait for my news." Olivia ignored him. After standing there for a moment, Ethan left. Olivia heard the sounds of the car engine downstairs getting more distant. Holding Connor in her arms, Olivia stood at the window and watched the car disappear into the night. Connor yawned. He was getting sleepy. Olivia put him to bed, then patted his back like she used to when they were on the island. Connor gripped a button of her pajamas, burying his little face in her chest. He quickly fell asleep. From time to time, he would smack his chubby pink lips. Mummy. Olivia's heart melted from how cute he was. It was getting late. Olivia lay on the bed, unable to fall asleep. Her phone screen notified her of a new message. Chapter 387. Olivia didn't sleep a wink at all. She grabbed her phone as soon as her phone screen lit up in the darkness. It was a text from Avery. Are you asleep yet? She got out of bed. Since she didn't want to wake the child, she headed to the washroom to call Avery. Avery's gentle voice rang into her ear. Hello. It's late, and you weren't asleep. Yeah. Did you find any leads? Yes. There are 2 things I wanna tell you. First, Mr. Carlton and Miss Rose are going to meet up soon. Second, I've found something about the person you wanted me to look into. Olivia's eyes lit up. She didn't hold high hopes of finding anything about that person, but Avery was surprisingly reliable. Who is that? She asked. The members of Toxic Hive use fake names, so knowing her name is pointless. Her code name is Begonia. I managed to track her current whereabouts. Would you like to meet up with her before she moves elsewhere? Avery reported his findings with equanimity, but he managed to make her jump out of excitement. She asked, Can I? I'm not sure what personal grudges are there between both of you, but I think it's best if you meet her in person to recognize her identity. Of course, she's a dangerous individual, considering that she's one of Toxic Hive. You have to do as I say to keep yourself safe. Okay, I'll drive to your place to pick you up. Terminating the call, Olivia was immersed in bubbles of joy. It seemed like God didn't abandon her. She thought she had walked to a dead end, but another door of possibility was open for her. Olivia entrusted Connor to Mina. The latter checked on the time. Miss Fordham, it's late. Where are you going? I have something urgent to settle. But Mr. Miller has said that it's best you don't leave the house tonight, the maid tried to dissuade Olivia. Olivia gave the maid a simple explanation, and Mina didn't stop her further. The bodyguards outside wanted to stop her, but Olivia already hopped into Avery's car. She watched the cars that were hot on their heels. She said solemnly, Mr. Avery, could you shake them off? For some reason, Olivia didn't want Ethan to know that she was investigating the matter. She simply wished to present him with the truth after getting to the bottom of it. Sure, hold on tight. Avery was not any ordinary person. His complexion seemed pale, but it didn't mask the formidable aura around him. He stabled himself in his seat as a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. Their car picked up its speed. Fortunately, there were barely any cars on the road. Olivia held onto her seatbelt and the rest arm. Those cars were speeding along the road like a movie scene. She finally had her first-hand experience of what Fast and Furious would be like. When Avery made a drift, she thought her soul would bounce out of her body. By the time they managed to shake those cars off, she realized that her hands were sweaty. Avery looked at her gently. Are you all right? Olivia, who had yet to regain her composure, replied, I'm all right. But my legs feel weak. He let out a soft chuckle. Looking at her pale expression, he caressed her head gently. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Both of them froze immediately. He withdrew his hand. Sorry, you're almost my sister's age, so I saw you as my younger sister for a moment back there. Chapter 388. Olivia knew that Avery was telling the truth. The warmth was evident in his gaze, but it was free from sensual emotions. She blinked her eyes, wondering if that was how it felt like to have an older brother. She smiled. It's all right, I'm not as lucky as you are to have so many siblings. I'm the only child in my family. It pained Avery to see the loneliness in her eyes. He took a document out of his bag. Here's Begonia's information. Take a look at it. She was impressed that he could dig out Begonia's information when she had only brought it up briefly. Not even Ethan could get such information in his hands. However, the woman on the document was wearing a mask. Olivia couldn't see her face. Avery explained, concealing their identity has always been a rule in Toxic Hive. Even those people who work together in the same space don't reveal their faces to each other. I see. Aside from Begonia's face, He had detailed information, such as her position in Toxic Hive. Instead of claiming that it was Begonia's personal information, the document was more like a resume. Her work experience was written clearly on it. She was a talented doctor who specialized in psychology and medicine development for mental-related illnesses. She was involved in several significant events that had happened abroad. The most renowned event was the Wandering Soul Street incident. Some tourists turned into wandering souls at a tourist spot. Although they didn't attack anyone, they kept wandering around like a lifeless person with blank expressions. The incident went viral on global news. Myths and rumors began circulating about how those tourists lost their souls due to black magic and that someone needed to call their souls back to their bodies. Specialists from each country showed up in ones and twos, claiming that those tourists were specimens. They were given shots that disrupted their nerves, hence the phenomenon. She joined Toxic Hive 12 years ago, and she's only 22 this year. Did they accept such young kids too? Inquired Olivia. Avery played with the sapphire ring around his finger. As I previously said, Peace's Embrace's objective is to help out the needy. That includes helping the homeless prodigies. Peace's Embrace will give them education access, especially about medicine. That way, the kids would be able to gain knowledge of an average medical student in their teens. While medical students were taking lectures in lecture halls, those kids put their knowledge to use in Toxic Hive. That's why they can become top specialists worldwide before reaching the age of 20. Olivia suddenly thought of Colin, who had proclaimed so many achievements when he was only 20 years old. Mr. Avery, you know so much about Toxic Hive. Do you know if Leo is one of them? Leo, Avery kneaded his eyebrows. Judging from his expression, she supposed that he knew the answer to that question and knew Colin as well. He is a capable neurologist. He's talented in surgeries, Avery answered. With that, Olivia could conclude that Leo was basically Colin. Leo and Begonia are different. He directly joined Toxic Hive, unlike Begonia. She left Peace's Embrace with a group of people who decided to split from it. As far as I know, both of them are Miss Rose's right-hand men. She asked further, is Miss Rosa the founder of Toxic Hive? That's not completely right. She's one of the managers. It's the same as the manager of a company's branch. Mr. Avery, how do you know Toxic Hive so well? It was as though he knew Toxic Hive like the back of his hand. He placed his finger before his lips. It's a secret. Chapter 389. Olivia felt it would be unbecoming of her to ask further questions, so she stopped. She and Avery were mere acquaintances. She was already grateful to him for being willing to tell her that much. Their car stopped in an alley that was free from surveillance cameras. There was a black SUV parked at the same place. We gotta change cars. Okay. Olivia got out of the car only to realize that the SUV had high performance. Even its windows were bulletproof. They were heading to the suburbs. Noticing that Olivia was slightly nervous, Avery took 2 bottles of yogurt drinks out from a small refrigerator. Want some? She was surprised when she saw him drinking it with a casual expression. It was strawberry flavored. Tea thanks. He chuckled. Frankly speaking, my family loves yogurt drinks, especially strawberry flavored ones. It is tasty. Olivia understood that he was trying to make her relax after noticing that she was nervous. The sourness and sweetness melted in her mouth, relieving her tension. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you, said Avery gently as he looked at her. Since we have the same last name, I see you as my younger sister. He impressed her as the nuance in her expression didn't go unnoticed to him. She expected nothing less from someone who possessed exceptional abilities. He could easily see through her. Avery reminded Olivia about what to take note of again. He asked her to disguise herself according to his request. She changed and wore a mask. Even if someone bumped into them, they wouldn't be exposed because that was how Toxic Hive members usually dressed up. The number of buildings in the surrounding area decreased, and there were barely any lights. She couldn't help the thrill zapping through her veins. Would she finally be able to find out the truth tonight? Ethan, who was wearing his gear, stood next to Chris. Ethan had put on makeup. Now, he was a mere average-looking security guard. The meetup location was at a castle. This mansion was built by foreigners during the invasion last century. The property was also owned by a foreigner. It was left unused for a long time. Roses crawled up the whole wall in the yard. The mansion seemed like a vampire's place from the Middle Ages under the dim light. The crows on the wall added a touch of spookiness to the atmosphere. Chris and Ethan alighted from the car and walked into the castle as requested. The moment they arrived, the rusty gates were opened automatically. The whole castle was so quiet that they could only hear the sound of their footsteps. Ethan didn't say anything as he followed behind Chris. When they entered the yard, the gates were closed automatically. It was as if they walked into the lion's den themselves. The castle was massive. Even the main entrance itself was grand. A lady's voice resounded through the smart doorbell. "Mr. Carlton is required to enter alone." Chris said indifferently, "He's my bodyguard in charge of my safety." "I brought only him." I said, "You're required to enter alone. Otherwise, you can leave right now." The men exchanged looks before Chris said, "Fine. I'll enter alone." The door opened, but Ethan didn't enter. He watched Chris enter the castle. Marina was in one of the rooms in the castle. Although she managed to survive, many parts of her body were broken. Her legs were crippled, and her chest was injured. Her whole body was in pain, hence her agony 24/7. The lady shook the phone at Marina. "Your father's here," hope tinged in Marina's dim eyes. She looked at the lady. Chapter 390. Under Marina's anxious gaze, the lady removed Marina's oxygen mask. "Just what do you want?" asked Marina weakly. Her question was free from her usual supercilious tone. "What do I want?" The lady chuckled softly. Her face was no less different from what Marina remembered. Time, which could be relentless, chose to be kind to this lady whose face was free from wrinkles. The lady was gentle and warm in the past. She had always looked at Marina with a warm gaze, giving Marina a wholesome childhood. Hence, Marina treasured this lady the most in her life. This lady was her mother, and no one could replace her. However, everything changed after the car accident happened. Looking at that lady's face, Marina knew how cruel this lady was and realized how foolish she had been. Tears ran down Marina's cheeks. Her voice was hoarse. "Don't you love Dad? Why did you stage your death and plot all of this?" "Love." Helen Gibson grinned like a madwoman. Like a loving mother, she caressed Marina's face. Yet, Marina was shaking. There was so much that she had faced within a day, and they ultimately toppled her impression of Helen. Helen wasn't an angel, she was a calculating devil. "Are you this afraid of me? If my memories serve me right, you clung to me a lot when you were young. You kept wanting to sleep with me every night. Darling, have you forgotten about me, your mother?" The mention of the word, mother, made Marina's skin crawl. She began crying buckets as those tears soaked the blanket. She had lost count of how many times she had cried. Her eyes were red. Her physical pain was pale in comparison to the wounds etched within her heart. "I called you, Mom, for so many years. Even if I'm not your biological daughter, you've taken care of me for so long. I missed you so much all these years, and I never accepted her. I even caused her miscarriage and made her barren to avenge you. How could you treat me like this? How could you?" Marina couldn't understand how the once gentle lady turned this way. Helen smiled. "Silly you. I don't hold any grudges against you. Your father's the one who owes me. Do you know how long I've been waiting for this day to come?" When she talked about that, her expression was tinged with madness. It scared Marina so much as she felt that something was wrong with Helen, especially Helen's face. Marina found it odd that Helen looked the same as she was when she passed away, over a decade ago. There were no wrinkles on her face. "I'm just curious how he would react after learning the truth. Would he regret giving me the bad treatment?" Helen put the oxygen mask back on Marina's face before wiping off Marina's tears. "Don't worry. Considering that I've taken care of you for so long, I'll spare your life. Now, it's his turn." Helen wiped the tears off her finger with a tissue. She casually threw it away into the trash can as if it was filthy. Marina watched Helen leave, feeling the urge to stop her. Marina thought while crying, "Dad, don't come. What's waiting ahead of you is only an abyss." Only then did she regret whatever she had done to Chloe. Chloe didn't know about Marina's identity, but she treated Marina with all her heart. She had always been on Marina's side, but Marina didn't appreciate it. The moment Marina shut her eyes, she could remember how she poured vegetable oil over the stairs that caused Chloe to suffer from a miscarriage due to a fall. When Chloe was discharged from the hospital, the young Marina looked at her guiltily. To Marina's surprise, the weak Chloe stroked her head. "It's all right that I've lost my child. I'll treat you better in the future." Chloe was clearly aware that it was Marina's doing, yet she didn't tell anyone about it. She lost her baby and almost lost her life. But she merely took it as a prank by the young Marina. From that day onward, Chloe also treated Marina better. Chloe assumed that Marina was simply afraid that the baby would shake up her position within the family. That was why Chloe treated Marina with care. Yet, what did Marina do? Marina didn't treat Chloe well, not even a day. Hurtful words were the only thing she hurled at Chloe. On the other hand, Chloe didn't take it to heart and did everything in her power to give Marina the maternal love she needed. If Marina could move herself at the moment, she would have slapped herself in the face a few times. Marina's bone marrow was compatible with Chloe's, but she didn't choose to save Chloe because she wanted to survive. Under the urge from the devil, Marina even drove Chloe to death. Whenever she recalled how Chloe bled, the weight of regret suffocated Marina. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said aloud in her head.